All right. Hello, everybody. Today is the 18th of April. Welcome to the SIG Instrumentation meeting. And let's get started with our first topic, Watch API. That's a topic we started last time, but didn't fully finish. I believe we have the author here.
Yeah, I guess that was mine.
Yes. Go ahead.
So should I give some context again, or?
Yeah, I think we only had like 3 minutes last time, so let's maybe start over.
Okay, so basically the idea is to introduce Watch capability to metric APIs. I guess all three of them. So resource metrics APIs or biometric server, and custom and external APIs as well. The latter two were suggested by Marcus, who is not here, but I think it makes sense for all of them to be consistent. And the reason why we want to do this is basically HPA. So in HPA is scaling deployment based on those metrics. So if it will be able to like subscribe and then get notifications about new metrics as soon as they appear, it will be like perform better because it will get the data faster. So that's where this is coming from. And there were some concerns about this. So I think all of them mentioned by you, but so let me go through them. One is the existing backends for custom and external metrics do not support streaming of metrics. So it would have to be emulated anyway on the whatever is serving the API. And I think this wouldn't be the case for resource metrics, because for metric server we can just notify everyone like as soon as the scraping is over, we can just notify everyone. So that wouldn't be a problem for resource metrics, but it would be a problem for custom and external metrics. And for those, I think we could just move the polling loop from the client to the server, so that the client would just subscribe and then get notifications. The server would do polling of whatever backend it is supporting. So whenever there will be more than one client, it will be like simplified. For multiple metrics, there was on the SIG instrumentation list, there was another problem mentioned that whenever there are different metrics that require different polling intervals, we probably want to poll for them individually. So that single watch on the metrics could result in multiple watches on being started by the server. But I think this could be mitigated by grouping the metrics and polling them in groups. So whatever, like all the metrics that are refreshed every minute would be polled together. Everything that is polled every 30 seconds, that is refreshed every 30 seconds would be polled together, and so on. And that's the lack of implementation part problem. But I think one more argument for introducing this API, even though no implementation today supports it, would be it could actually encourage people to implement this on the backend side. So if you want to show that your metric backend is the best one because you can scale fast if you use it, then you could just implement the watch API in whatever monitoring like solution you're using. So that was the one problem. Another one was migration. Because there is a number of implementation that exist today, and they would be essentially broken if we just added that. But I think since this is an API change, it would require changing the API version as well. All those implementations, in order to migrate to a new API version, would have to implement the watch. Otherwise, they would be serving an old API version, which would be there for some time. But since this is all in beta, when we go to stable, they would have to implement that anyway to serve a stable V1 API. Yeah, I think that summarizes all the discussions so far.
One more question I had. Have you done an analysis what this would mean for the HPA? Would there need to be modifications to the HPA other than supporting the watch API? Would they? I'm not 100% sure anymore. Is the API version is not specifiable in the HPA, right? So currently they're actually bound to this API. That would probably mean that HPA would need to be bumped to V3, right?
That's a good point. I didn't do any analysis around that. I was just chatting with some folks from HPA, like we're working on the HPA.
Just for my understanding, is this actually a requirement coming from SIG autoscaling?
So they wanted to speed things up, and their approach was basically do more frequent polling, which is, well, it would get them lower latency, but I think the right thing to do this is by pushing the metrics rather than pulling them from the HPA.
I mean, in reality, most monitoring systems, even if they are somewhat push-based, have some sampling in between. So I think we're probably rarely going to see sub-second latency for updates anyways. Just something to keep in mind, not necessarily blocking this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so to answer your question, no, this is not a requirement to have a watch. The requirement is to have the metrics fast, and the watch is how I think it should be done.
But there are two layers, right? I mean, you have the metric server and then the thing that it is gathering metrics from. So like if you introduce watch at the front layer, then now it becomes possible to facilitate a different mode of communication between, the metric server and the thing that it is getting metrics from, so that maybe one day you have watch-based thing all the way through. So it would be a necessary requirement of that. I mean, maybe it doesn't get you there in one step, but it seems like if we ever want to get to a state like that, then this would have to be done.
Yeah, I think this is what. So earlier I said it would enable implementations, and by this I mean further improvements would be enabled. So subsequent would be like second latency would be eventually enabled if we do this. And there are other changes that will follow in the implementation of those metrics.
If I'm following you, you're like an example of that would be, I don't know, the kubelet pushing metrics, and because of that push, immediately the watch would propagate through the system.
Yeah, I mean that would be like the ideal scenario, right? I mean, right now it wouldn't really change anything. But
yeah.
uh,
Yeah, I think I think this is still a difficult thing to get right. I think we can move forward and maybe write a bit more detailed of a proposal for this. I do want us to. I would like to see us investigate the HPA side of things a little bit more and see what their actual requirements are and what this kind of API change would mean for them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I will reach out to them.
Yeah. And then I think it would be, I think it's hard to tell which ones are the most popular ones. I guess at least, I mean, metric server obviously needs to have an implementation of this. And I'd like to at least see an analysis of how maybe the Stackdriver and the Prometheus adapters could potentially implement this. Out of curiosity, I don't know if anyone's here who can answer this, but is Stackdriver's like query engine streamable? As in, like, is something like this even fundamentally possible in Stackdriver?
I don't know the implementation details, but I guess it depends on the amount of work that would need to be put there.
I know at least in Prometheus this has been discussed a number of times, and it's absolutely non-trivial.
Yeah, I cannot speak for Stackdriver. So.
Yeah. Anyways, I think it'd be at least nice to have an analysis of what like the watch would also mean in terms of the capacity planning, because for metric server we initially did some very specific capacity planning, and I'd like to see what kind of impact this would have on metric server in terms of scalability.
Yeah, but there is this other proposal from SIG to change change how we fetch those usage metrics from kubelet. And I think it would actually reduce the memory footprint, because we won't ingest the whole summary API. And I haven't done a lot of analysis there, but I think this could save some resources that could be used to keep a pool of clients.
Yeah, actually, metric server only keeps, like, in terms of what it keeps in memory is actually just those two numbers per pod and per.
Sure, but but the scraping logic is a part of the metric server, so you have to fetch this all this JSON.
Right. There was a proposal to change metric server to consume the Prometheus format, anyways. So yeah.
Yeah, that's the one I was referring to.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, absolutely. I mean, and then I think there's still, but this is probably further out. We still should discuss. We probably don't have time for this today, but we should discuss further how to get rid of cAdvisor in the long run. But yeah, I don't know if there are any other opinions out there. I feel like this does need a little bit more thought, but I think we can move forward. I think we've thought about a lot of aspects already. Yeah. Okay. Then maybe let's move on to the next topic. This is Han, control plane metric stability cap. Take it away.
Yeah, so I introduced this last time, gotten a round of feedback. I feel like I've touched base with just about everybody. I've talked to people from SIG people from API Machinery, obviously a lot of people here. So it doesn't seem like that there are any blocking objections, but I could be wrong if. And so my thought was to phase this out. So I had a couple questions. One of them was, do we have a directory that SIG Instrumentation owns?
Not formally in the same way as like SIG CLI does or something like that. It's pretty much spread out through the entire repository.
Okay, can we change this?
Sure. I think as long as we're keeping sane software engineering practices, I think.
Yeah, for sure. So the reason why I would like to change this is, one, so this code would have to live somewhere. Currently, I have been putting this stuff in utils metrics, which does not have an owner. It's owned by whoever owns utils. The reason why it would be good to have a folder that SIG Instrumentation owned is because once this framework is in place and we have static analysis, we can basically do the same thing that conformance tests do. And the thing that conformance tests do is there's a folder which SIG architecture owns. And in a pre-commit stage, static analysis is run against things which are tested for conformance. And then basically a file is diffed, which belongs to this SIG architecture directory. And if there is a diff present, then you have to commit that diff. And that requires then that you have to have LGTMs and approvers from that directory. So what this would do it would enable SIG instrumentation, instead of being scattered out through the various Kubernetes code base, it would actually give a centralized place of ownership and also allow us to automatically be tagged for PRs. I'm sure everybody wants this. This is like, I'm sure metrics stuff has probably been driving everyone nuts because it's not audited. So yeah, so anyway, if we don't have a directory, I've currently been working out of utils metrics. We can add an owner files there. Or if anyone has a better suggestion on where we could create a directory, or if anyone is against this directory too, please, I'm happy to hear what people think.
I don't have a great idea for the directory, but I love the idea. Like, this is what we've been missing. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Very,
awesome.
Yeah, really nice.
Yeah. I talked to Jordan about it, and he suggested it to me, and I was like, oh, this is like basically, yeah, it's perfect. So for now, I will add an owner's files to utils metrics. I guess we can try to figure out if there's a more proper place we can put it. But does anyone have any objections to the proposal? I'm sure it's been like now several weeks for the proposal. Does anyone have any blocking concerns?
I just haven't been able to look at the more recent changes, but what I reviewed, looked pretty good overall. But yeah, I don't have to necessarily block this. If there are enough people agreeing with this, I'm happy to move forward. Otherwise, I'm also happy to review once more. Yeah,
so another thing is this thing will likely occur in a number of stages. So obviously, we're not going to migrate the entire code base right away. This thing will be isolated to our newfound metrics directory. And so unit tested, whatever. And then we can get various components in place, like the static analysis thing. And then we can start migrating a binaries metrics endpoints one at a time. And this will mitigate risk, obviously. So I am envisioning a multi-phase process here. And so, which is why I have been pushing, and thank you everybody for being so patient with me. And, because I envision that there's a lot of steps to do, and getting blocked on the earlier stages will obviously just make the entire process a bit more drawn out.
Just from a implementability standpoint, the KEP doesn't have any reviewers listed or approvers listed. There's a bunch of TBD stuff basically still in here. So yes. I'd say until all those TBDs get filled out, it can't possibly be mergeable. So that would be the big blocker, in my opinion. There's a bunch of TBDs. They need to not say that.
The graduating criteria, it almost doesn't have any graduating criteria because it will not actually be graduated into the code base, right? It will live in an orphan state until we have a migration cap, until we have static analysis cap. But I mean,
you should say that.
Okay, yeah, I can write that. I can write that. Sure. Okay. Then,
I mean, there should, even if that's the case, I feel like Elena's right. I think there should still be reviewers and approvers.
I will put them. I will add some.
Yeah. Yeah. Good catch. Thanks.
Yeah. So that was it for that. Oh yeah. So I inquired about the in-person SIG. It sounds like there are many people here going to Barcelona.
I am.
Yeah. So, so it turns out it's too late to have an in-person SIG. They are out of rooms. So I'm sure we can just meet up and yeah, figure it out or something. But
yeah,
I doubt that they're out of rooms because last year, like this happened where we failed to schedule a thing and they found us a room. So
yeah, I have good connections to Chris from the CNCF. I think we might be able to make that happen, anyways.
Okay, awesome.
And announcing it in advance this time, as opposed to scheduling it at the conference, is better for everyone.
Yeah, let me write to Chris right after this meeting and let's get something set up. Good call. Feel free to call me out on things like that when I mess up on scheduling things.
That was it for me. Oh yeah, that's right. I actually did talk to the Open Census team this week. So currently their metrics related code and their tracing related code is a bit coupled. I don't think that they are necessary. At least the person I talked to said for their Java client library that the code was quite coupled, and he suspects it's the same way for the Golang library. So it would take some wrangling to be able to use one without the other. And they are working right now on breaking it apart, because in our case, it may or may not make sense to bring in the metrics things, given the fact that we are using the Prometheus client. Anyway, yeah, that's just, I just started a line of communication with them. If anybody has any questions or anything, I'm happy to. They sit literally like 400 feet away from me, so I can just pop by and ask them questions.
One thing, hi, I'm Austin with Open Tracing. I don't know if everyone's aware, but we are merging the projects together. And right now, I think the current plan is to have to publish a roadmap like within the next day or two. But next week we should have a draft specification up, and that I think would be the place to ensure that like the metrics and the tracing components were cleft in plain.
Yeah.
Decoupled. Yeah. I certainly know the plan is to have interfaces and implementations decoupled, and I focused on the tracing side, but I presume the same thing applies to metrics. So if that's something that anyone here is interested in, then
yeah, you should. If you don't mind linking it probably to the group, I would definitely be interested. Mostly, I also just think it would be easier to get tracing stuff in without metrics related code changes because,
because there's already a bunch
Yeah, it's already there. There would be some friction into replacing the metrics thing, and then obviously we have to be very concerned about increasing the binary size. Unnecessarily. So
let me.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go on. I think the last thing on the agenda was talking about this generally.
Yeah. No. I was going to say last time we talked about introducing open census was a difficulty with that is at least for tracing, and I guess for some of the open tracing implementations is the same case, that there is some agent that the thing the thing that actually produces the spans needs to talk to, right? And that's kind of a difficult situation for the kubelet, for example. Like, how can we, like, we'd significantly complicate the setup of Kubernetes if we force everyone to have this agent there. I'm not sure that's a thing that we can do. I know, or I've heard of at some point that possibly these functionalities could be embedded into the application itself. I don't know how feasible that of a thing that actually is, but then again, that would influence what Han mentioned about binary size. I think there are various things that we may need to think through a little bit more. I'm generally I think I'm a huge fan of especially having the correlation of multiple signals, like being able to make use of like exemplars and metrics to be able to tell a trace sample from a histogram bucket or something. That's absolutely amazing. I totally want that. Like it's mostly an organizational problem, I think, introducing it into Kubernetes, and of course not breaking everything we already have.
It would probably be easiest to introduce the tracing first, and then if we wanted to do the metrics migration, then to do it, and then to get the exemplar stuff, right? It's probably the easiest way.
Yeah. I think and the way that it theoretically will work or should work, because we're modeling a lot of stuff after census, is that traces and metrics, as long as they're generated from the same thing, essentially, do like have nice correlation stuff added in, I believe. I think in terms of like where you would actually, yes, there is some sort of something that needs to an agent process. It can be run inside the process itself. I know like Census uses pages for this, so you don't actually have to connect it. You don't have to run anything else. They're just available at some endpoint. I think you would be able to. I think it seems to me that there would be a way to start adding this through just the tracing side, not actually bundle in anything else, and then provide a way to configure where they get sent to. And then you would have sort of the best of both worlds. People that wanted to opt in could plug in, a Jaeger or Stackdriver or whatever and see traces. And then people that didn't want that, well, if you don't have anything there, it just sits there.
Yeah, I think like the reason for the agent is so that all of this logic of supporting Jaeger and Zipkin and all of those other projects is so that it doesn't have to live in your application, right? But then pulling that in reverses that, and it's kind of a difficult call to make. I mean, there is some essentially open census does standardize this in some way by standardizing the communication to this agent, right? So maybe this is a problem we can just shift away from the agent and put it closer to the thing that actually ingests this. I have no clue. Like, this is just thinking out loud. I have no clue if this is a realistic thing with these projects.
I think we're going to the agent.
Sorry?
I think we would need the agent. The agent is basically like a sidecar exporter.
Right, but
Yeah.
because the point of it is that it actually talks to the real upstream project, right, and does this sampling decision. So
Yes.
like it's kind of a difficult thing to introduce architecturally into Kubernetes, I think.
I mean, would it though? You would just run. You would run
Yeah.
an agent in the wherever you in whatever pod you needed it.
Your master pod, right?
Yeah, and it's effectively you would run the agent in the master pod or whatever. You would configure all of the you would configure all the tracers to report to that pod you would make it available at whatever name, and then I think the only thing that would be maybe a little weird is like how would you. There's a couple ways the agents can point to other agents, so you could have that agent, and then you could have a user actually say like, well, I want to direct all that traffic to this agent where I've actually put in my exporters. But there's still keep in mind like some of these terms might change, and like right now we're only guaranteeing to support current open census stuff for 2 years. There'll be a bridge between that and the new project, so I would expect that there will be some changes happening to the agent and to the open census service stuff as well.
Okay, I don't know how everybody else feels about this, but this sounds to me like we probably shouldn't be introducing either of those two projects right now. We should probably influence at least or get an idea of what the metrics side of things is going to look like, so that we do have a non-breaking migration path from what we have right now with the native Prometheus client to what I would hope is open metrics.
We still want some sort of tracing like ability, so we should have at least a stopgap. I mean, 2 years to have, the master without any sort of tracing ability is probably not a desirable state.
I understand the 2 years is for the existing projects. Like there's going to be a new project, right, which is supported for like until the next project.
The new project is supported. Yeah, sure. But my point is, if you said, okay, we'll do census today, then as of like the end of this year, I think we're planning to sunset in November, tracing and open census. There will be 2 years from that date. Like we will support the bridges to the new project. So if this isn't something that y'all need to do like immediately, then it might be good to give it a couple months. And because I believe our schedule right now is to have 1.0 of the Golang new thing done by September, it looks like.
Sounds ambitious.
Yes.
Okay, sorry everyone, we're already 5 minutes over. I think this is a very interesting discussion, and I think we should continue next time. Let's put this one, just like we did with the Watch API last time, let's put this one on the top for next time, and then we can continue that discussion. Maybe we'll even have some new information in this area already. Okay. Thanks everyone for attending, and see you in 2 weeks, and happy local time. Bye-bye.
Ciao.